The lock turned, but the door didn't open. That's when I realized I wasn't just locked out of the house. I was being erased from my own family. And the silence behind that door was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Before I tell you what happened next, if you're drawn to real stories about betrayal, buried family secrets, and the kind of revenge that doesn't scream but still lands hard, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon. These stories reach the right people because of support like yours, and some truths deserve to be heard all the way through. The house had belonged to our mother. Not legally, maybe not even officially in the way people argue about, but in every way that matters. It was where we grew up, where scraped knees were patched up, where birthdays were celebrated unevenly but sincerely, where grief first taught us what it meant to lose something and still keep going. After Mom passed, nothing was discussed properly. That's how my sister, Claire, preferred things. Vague, unspoken, floating in the space between politeness and control. I lived out of state at the time. Work, distance, life, it all became a convenient excuse. Claire stayed close. She always had. She knew the neighbors, the routines, the way people get comfortable when they think time is on their side. When I came back that afternoon, I wasn't prepared for the finality of the moment. My key didn't work. The handle resisted. A new lock. Clean, intentional. I knocked. Once, then again. No answer. I stepped back, looked through the front window. Familiar furniture, same curtains, everything exactly where it had always been, except me. I called her, straight to voicemail. I stood there longer than I should have, hoping this was a mistake, that she'd step out, laugh awkwardly, say something about a misunderstanding. But she didn't. Eventually, a neighbor walked by. She slowed, awkward. "I thought you moved," she said gently. That's when the cold settled in. I drove away without knowing where I was going, parked somewhere quiet, sat in the car with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing slowly, trying not to let years of unspoken resentment finally break the surface. Claire and I had always been different. She was decisive, confident, the kind of person who filled silence with certainty. I was the one who waited, listened, gave space. Our mother used to say Claire would lead and I would keep things steady. But somewhere along the line, leadership had turned into entitlement. I didn't call her again that day. Instead, I did something I hadn't done since the week after Mom's funeral. I called her lawyer. His name was Robert Hale. I remembered him because he spoke softly, like someone who understood that words could bruise if handled carelessly. He answered on the third ring. "This is Robert Hale." I told my name. There was a pause. Not long, but deliberate. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you," he said. That alone made my stomach tighten. "I don't understand," I replied. "I can imagine," he said. "But before we talk further, I need to ask, are you somewhere private?" "Yes," I said. "Why?" Another pause. "Because what I'm about to tell you," he said carefully, "is something your sister has worked very hard to make sure you never heard." The air felt heavier suddenly. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Your mother," he said, "was very clear with me about one thing. She didn't want her wishes misunderstood, rewritten, or softened." I felt something shift inside me. Not hope, something sharper. "So she worried about Claire?" I asked. He didn't answer directly. "She worried about dynamics, about power, about what happens when one voice goes unchallenged long enough." I closed my eyes. "She asked me," he continued, "to pay attention, not just to outcomes, but to behavior." That's when my breath caught. "Robert," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "my sister changed the locks on the house." "I know," he replied. The words landed like a physical impact. "How could you possibly know that?" I asked. Because she called me this morning to make sure I wouldn't speak to you." I said nothing. "She was very convincing," he added. "Concerned, protective. She framed it as necessary." "Necessary?" I repeated. "Yes," he said. "She said you were unstable, that you might misunderstand things. The familiar sting of being labeled, quietly and effectively." "And did you believe her?" I asked. "No," he said, "because your mother anticipated this." I opened my eyes. "She told me," he continued, "that if Claire ever tried to move you out of the picture, it would be because she thought she could. Thought she could. Not needed to, not forced to, chosen to." "What did my mother say exactly?" I asked. There was a hesitation this time. Not uncertainty, respect. She said, "If my children ever stop listening to each other, tell the one who's been silenced that silence was never meant to be permanent." My throat tightened. "And he asked me," he added, "to tell you something specific if that day ever came." "What?" I whispered. "She asked me to tell you," Robert said slowly, "that Claire's confidence has always depended on you staying quiet." The words froze me. Not because they were shocking, but because they were true. Every time I'd stepped back, Claire stepped forward. Every time I chose peace, she chose control. And somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing my restraint as strength. She saw it as permission. "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "You don't need to do anything yet," Robert replied. "You just need to stop reacting." "Why?" "Because people who act this way," he said, "make their biggest mistakes when they think they've already won." I sat there for a long time after the call ended. The house, the lock, the narrative Claire had been shaping quietly, carefully over years. She thought this was the end of something, but what she didn't know, what she couldn't know yet, was that by locking me out, she had finally forced the truth into the open. And once the truth starts moving, it doesn't stop politely. It keeps going, right through everyone who tried to bury it. I didn't go back to the house that night. I didn't text Claire. I didn't leave a message. I did exactly what Robert suggested. I stopped reacting. Instead, I checked into a small hotel near the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just clean, quiet, and anonymous enough that I could think without feeling watched. I lay on the bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments from the past with a new lens. The way Claire had always handled things for Mom. The way she'd step in during conversations and gently redirect them. The way decisions somehow got made without discussion, yet everyone felt too tired to challenge them afterward. I had called it efficiency. I had called it confidence. What I hadn't called it was what it really was: control disguised as competence. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A message from Claire. "Where are you staying? We need to talk. This doesn't have to be ugly." Ugly, as if I'd caused something by noticing. I didn't respond. Instead, I went for a walk. The town hadn't changed much. Same bakery on the corner, same park where Mom used to bring us when we were kids. I sat on a bench and watched people pass, each one carrying their own version of certainty about their lives. That's when it hit me. Claire wasn't afraid of confrontation. She was afraid of exposure. She had built her authority quietly, over time, through proximity and repetition. She'd positioned herself as the responsible one, the reliable one, the voice of reason, and I had helped by being the one who didn't interrupt. Around noon, Robert called again. "I wanted to check in," he said. "See how you're holding up." "I'm clear. Not calm, not angry, just clear." "That's good," he said. "Clarity changes how people behave around you." I asked him what he meant. "Your sister is reaching out," he said. "Not to you, to others." That didn't surprise me. "She's concerned about how things might look," he continued. "She wants to make sure the story stays consistent." "What story?" I asked. "That she's protecting the family," he said. "From conflict, from confusion. From you." There it was, the quiet erasure wrapped in concern. "She's telling people I moved away," I said slowly, "that I don't want to be involved." "Yes," he replied, "and the lock change was temporary, practical." "Practical," I repeated. "Here's the thing," Robert said. "Stories like that only work when no one challenges them, and right now, she believes you won't." I smiled faintly. "She's wrong." He paused. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," I said, "that I've been trying to prove I belong in that house since we were children, and I'm done proving." That afternoon, I did something I should have done years ago. I called people myself, not to accuse, not to correct, just to reconnect. My aunt, an old family friend, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in a while. I didn't tell them I'd been locked out. I asked questions, how they were, what they remembered about Mom, about how decisions used to be made. And slowly, without prompting, patterns emerged. "She always took charge," my aunt said gently. "Your sister, I mean. Your mother trusted her, but she worried too." "Worried about what?" I asked. "That no one ever pushed back," she replied. "Especially you." That evening, I finally responded to Claire's message. "I'm in town," I wrote. "We can talk when you're ready to be honest." Her reply came almost immediately. "I've always been honest." That made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. We agreed to meet the next day at a cafe. Neutral territory again. She chose the place, of course she did. Claire arrived early. I could tell by the way she'd already positioned herself. Back straight, hands folded, expression calm. She looked like someone preparing to explain something to a child. "You didn't have to make this difficult," she said after we sat down. "I didn't," I replied. "You changed the locks." She exhaled slowly. "I did that to prevent confusion." "Whose confusion?" I asked. "Everyone's," she said. "You live far away. You don't know what goes on here day to day." "I know you didn't ask," I replied. Her jaw tightened. "I didn't need to. Mom trusted me." "Did she?" I asked. That was the first crack. "She trusted me to manage things," Claire said carefully. "She trusted you to listen," I replied. "Those aren't the same." She leaned forward. "Why are you doing this now?" "Because you made it impossible not to," I said calmly. She shook her head. "You are overreacting." There it was again, the dismissal, the quiet invalidation. "I'm reacting appropriately," I said. "You just aren't used to me reacting at all." For a moment, she looked genuinely uncertain. Then she shifted strategies. "I've carried this family," she said. "I stayed. I handled everything. You left." "I didn't leave," I replied. "I lived my life." "And I didn't?" she shot back. "You lived everyone else's," I said, without asking. Her eyes flashed. "Someone had to." "No," I said. "Someone chose to." The conversation ended without resolution. It couldn't have ended any other way. Claire wasn't ready to hear anything that didn't confirm her version of events. But that was fine, because I wasn't there to convince her. I was there to let her know I wasn't invisible anymore. That night, my phone rang. It was my cousin, Mark. "She called me," he said. "Wanted to know what you'd said to me." "And what did you tell her?" I asked. "That you sounded like someone who finally stopped apologizing," he replied. I smiled. The next few days were a study in quiet unraveling. Claire's messages became more frequent, more pointed. She asked where I was staying, what my plans were, whether I intended to cause problems. I didn't answer most of them. Instead, I let people come to their own conclusions. And they did. Because when someone controls the narrative long enough, the smallest deviation feels like a revelation. Then, late one evening, Robert called again. "There's something else you should know," he said. I braced myself. "Your mother," he continued, "always believed that if the truth came out too forcefully, it would tear you both apart. She hoped restraint would protect the relationship." "And did it?" I asked. "No," he said softly. "It protected the illusion." I closed my eyes. She also said, he added, that if Claire ever crossed a certain line, you'd recognize it immediately. What line? I asked. The moment she stopped treating you like family, he replied, and started treating you like an obstacle. I thought of the lock, the new key, the door that wouldn't open. She crossed it, I said. Yes, Robert agreed. And once that happens, the dynamic can't return to what it was. I understood then that what I was feeling wasn't loss, it was release. Because the hardest part of being betrayed by someone close isn't what they do, it's realizing how long you helped them do it. Claire thought she'd secured her position by locking me out. What she didn't realize was that she'd finally given me the freedom to stop protecting her version of the truth. And once that protection was gone, everything she'd built on it began to shift, quietly, in ways she wouldn't fully understand until it was far too late. By the end of that week, the silence around Claire grew heavier than any argument we'd ever had. It wasn't that people suddenly turned against her. It was subtler than that. They started asking questions she wasn't prepared to answer. Simple ones, polite ones, the kind that sound harmless but loosen carefully tied knots. Why didn't you tell us she was back in town? Why did you change the locks without mentioning it? Why does she sound so calm about all this? Calm frightened Claire more than anger ever could. I knew because she finally showed up at the hotel unannounced. It was early evening. I was sitting by the window watching the parking lot lights flicker on when there was a sharp knock at my door. Not hesitant, not polite, precise, controlled. When I opened it, she stood there with the same composed posture she'd worn all her life, but her eyes gave her away. They were scanning, measuring, calculating. "You didn't tell me where you were staying," she said, stepping inside without waiting to be invited. "I didn't think I needed permission," I replied, closing the door behind her. She looked around the room as if cataloging evidence. "This is unnecessary," she said. "All of this." "What part?" I asked. "The distance? Or the fact that you can't manage it?" She turned sharply. "I've managed far worse." "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You think managing people is the same as caring for them." She scoffed. "You've always been dramatic." "And you've always relied on that belief," I replied. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the air conditioner filled the space between us. Then she said something that finally stripped the politeness away. "You don't understand how fragile things were after Mom got sick," Claire said. "Someone had to make decisions. Someone had to keep everything together. And you decided that someone was you," I said. "I stepped up," she snapped. "You stepped away." I shook my head. "I stepped back because you pushed forward without asking." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You never objected." "No," I said. "I trusted." That word landed harder than anything else I could have said. She looked away. "You always do this," she muttered. "You make me sound like a villain." "I don't need to," I replied. "You do that yourself when you refuse to acknowledge me." She turned back, eyes sharp. "What do you want?" It was the first honest question she'd asked. "I want access to my home," I said, "and I want the truth to stop being filtered through you." She laughed, but it was brittle. "You think people will listen to you now?" "I think they already are," I replied. Her expression changed then. Not anger, not arrogance, fear. "You're turning them against me," she said. "No," I said calmly. "I'm just not protecting you anymore." She took a step closer. "You owe me," she said, "for everything I handled, everything I sacrificed." I met her gaze. "Sacrifice doesn't give you ownership." She stared at me, searching for something familiar, something compliant. She didn't find it. "You always hid behind silence. Now you think speaking up makes you strong?" "No," I replied. "It makes me free." She left without another word. The next day, I went back to the house. Not to move in, not to confront her, just to stand outside. The front door looked the same, Fresh paint, new handle, same porch light Mom used to forget to turn off. I didn't try the lock. I didn't need to. I stood there long enough for the neighbor across the street to notice. "Good to see you," she called out, crossing over. "We were wondering when you'd come back." "Back?" I repeated. She smiled kindly. "Well, you belong here too, don't you?" That simple sentence nearly undid me. Later that afternoon, my aunt invited both of us to dinner. Claire tried to decline. I accepted. The table was crowded, familiar faces, familiar smells, familiar tension. No one mentioned the locks. They didn't need to. Conversation flowed easily until someone asked about the house. "I hear you made some changes," my aunt said lightly, looking at Claire. She smiled. "Just updates." "And access? Did you give her a key?" Claire's smile faltered. "We're working that out." "I haven't been given one," I spoke up, voice steady. The table went quiet. Not shocked, not outraged, just attentive. My aunt nodded slowly. "That doesn't sound like working it out." Claire looked around, realizing she wasn't in control of the room anymore. "It's complicated," she said. "No," I replied gently. "It was made complicated." No one argued. That night, Claire called me again. This time, she didn't accuse. She bargained. "Let's reset," she said. "We can tell people there was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding requires mutual confusion," I replied. "This was deliberate." She sighed. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth," I said. "Out loud. To the people you spoke for." Silence stretched between us. "That will make me look bad," she finally said. "I know. That's why you won't do it." She hung up. The following days were uncomfortable for her, I could tell. Invitations included both of us now. Conversations paused when she entered. People asked her questions she couldn't deflect without seeming evasive. And through it all, I remained calm. That was the hardest part for her to understand. I wasn't plotting. I wasn't threatening. I wasn't demanding. I was simply present. And presence, when denied for long enough, becomes powerful. Robert called once more. "She's struggling," he said. "I'm not surprised," I replied. "She thought control was protection," he continued. "Now she's realizing it was isolation." I thought of Mom, of all the moments she'd watched us from the sidelines, hoping we'd find balance on our own. "I don't want to destroy her," I said. "I know, but consequences don't require cruelty." By the end of the month, Claire finally handed me a key. Not ceremoniously, not apologetically. She placed it on the kitchen counter and slid it toward me without meeting my eyes. "There," she said. "You have access." I picked it up, feeling its weight. "This doesn't fix everything," she added. "I know, but it changes something important." "What?" she asked quietly. "It reminds us both," I said, "that I was never a guest." She nodded once. We stood there, surrounded by walls that held too many memories and too many secrets. And I knew then that the real reckoning wasn't over, because the deepest betrayals don't end when access is restored. They end when the truth about who we allowed ourselves to be finally comes into the light. And that truth was just beginning to reach the people who mattered most. The key sat heavy in my palm long after Claire walked out of the kitchen. I didn't follow her. I didn't say thank you. I didn't test the lock right away. I stood there, listening to the house settle, the soft creaks and distant hum that had once meant safety. Having access again felt less like victory and more like responsibility, because now the silence was gone, and silence had been Claire's greatest shield. Over the next few weeks, things shifted in ways that were impossible to undo. Family gatherings no longer revolved around her version of events. People started calling me directly instead of asking her first. Small choices she'd always made on everyone's behalf were suddenly questioned. Not aggressively, not cruelly, just openly. That was the revenge I hadn't planned, but fully accepted. One afternoon, my cousin stopped by while I was sitting on the back steps. "I didn't know," she said, sitting beside me, "about how things really were." "I know. You weren't supposed to." She hesitated. "Claire always said you preferred distance." I smiled faintly. "Distance is easy to assign when you're the one controlling the map." That sentence traveled faster than I expected. It wasn't gossip, it was recognition. People began to understand that the story they'd been told for years had been carefully edited. Not with lies exactly, with omissions, with tone, with timing. Claire noticed. She became quieter at gatherings, less certain. Her confidence cracked in moments she couldn't predict. One evening, she confronted me again, this time at the house. "You're enjoying this," she accused, standing across from me in the living room. "No," I said honestly. "I'm enduring it." She frowned. "Then why won't you just tell them to stop treating me like this?" I met her eyes. "Because I never asked you to stop speaking for me." Her shoulders slumped slightly. "You could fix this." "I could hide it. That's different."